Good morning. This is Sweetie Berry. We've been having technical difficulties at Dare Whimsy. This is Between Us Girls, the Women of Dare Whimsy. We're glad to have you with us this morning. Our crew will be here with just a moment. Between Us Girls is a conversation between the women of Dare Whimsy, a community for gifted and creative girls of all ages. Each Wednesday we meet together to have conversation about living life as a gifted or creative woman. You know, whether we are a child, a teenager, a tween, a mom, a young mom, a single, or a grown-up in some other capacity, living gifted is always an adventure. One of the experiences of being a gifted woman is often isolation, whether you were raised in a small town or in a large crowd suburban area. Finding other creatives and gifted women sometimes is difficult. Today, we hope to have a time of community, a time of coming together and sharing our experiences as gifted women. Today's topic will be When Routines Rock. And we'll be sharing insights from our lives as gifted women who are creative entrepreneurs, as well as mothers, stepmoms, wives, and single moms, and people that are actually living their daily life and learning from each other. We hope that you'll join us. For those of you who have not been here before, we are a community on the internet at darewhimsy.com. Each Wednesday we meet here live at the Hangout, and we have a Hangout experience. After the Hangout on Thursdays, we also have a time of reflective. People bring in their best hints for the topics we've talked about. They come back into space and they share what they know on a quick fix. You know, things that just say, here's how I handled that. Here's what happened when I had that experience. And then later they go back to their own blogs and they write more about that topic. You know, you won't relate to every single person on our team, but I bet you if you read through them, somebody will relate and resonate with who you are. And you're welcome to follow them home and to share your writings with them too. You see, we don't want to be some kind of expert or guru. We want to be people who are coming together as a community, a nest, a place to fly to find warmth, acceptance, to find information and awareness of what it is to do what you're trying to do. Whether that's survive being a gifted girl when so many expectations are there, how to overcome perfectionism, how to simply get into action. You know, so many times that we live in our heads as gifted women. We can just completely control things that work in our head beautifully, and real life is a lot messier than that. Learning to work with multi-intelligences is messy. Learning to be able to control your time and to be able to modify what you need to do for expectations so that it's a more friendly community takes maturity. Living with other people sometimes is frustrating for the gifted person because we assimilate so much and we're not sure why we can do things. We just can. So I hope that you'll join us each week on Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. When we're not having technical difficulties, we certainly have a tape playing on darewhimsy.com as well, Between Us Girls. We want this to be a place where you can come and find fellowship, information, and great experiences. I hope you'll be with us. You know, I'm going to check on real quick to see if our guests, if they're not being able to get into the room, because I suspect that they are missing an address or they would be here. It's unusual for our team not to all be here at one time. And Facebook, as well as Google Hangouts, are having some difficulties today. So if you'll bear with me for just a moment, I'm going to make sure that everybody got the link to come into it, because, you know, usually we have 7 or 8 people here, and it would be very unusual for us not to be all together in the room at the same time. So I bet with the snow and ice that is happening, some people are having difficulties finding the room. Internet has been different all over the United States. In fact, some of my clients have been traveling and they're having difficulty even getting to internet space because there's so many people in hotels and such that the internet's being dragged down a good bit. Let me go ahead and put a link out there for anyone who's trying to find us, because that may be the problem. And it could be that they need some extra help. I see Anisha Robinson Key is there, and she's having a problem getting to us. I'm certainly going to push it back to her differently, and I'm going to push it to our Gail Roddy and Sarah Cook as well, because I know that they're anxious to be with you today, and I know that they are bottom line excited to share this topic. It's so important that we have time with one another, that we have an experience to understand, wow, we all have these deals. This is not just a one-person conversation. There are hundreds and thousands of gifted women. And those gifted women need community just like we do. So it's an exciting time to literally take some time to figure it out. I hear someone coming in our room right now.
Anisha.
Hi, Anisha. Good morning. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
And I see Sarah has joined us. We're having a little bit of technical difficulty this morning. They gave us a new room immediately, and so that's exciting. Sarah, if you wouldn't mind taking over the muting process when it's time. And Anisha, it's so exciting to have you with us today. I would love for you to introduce yourself. I'll pop you into the main screen in just a moment and let them know who you are, what you do, and what your title of a gifted girl, because I know you're gifted, but they may not know that you're a gifted mom too.
Cool.
All right. Good morning. This is Anisha Robinson Keys. I'm so glad to have you with us this morning. There you go, Anisha. You're up.
I am Anisha Robinson Keys, and I work for a company called Lansley Planning, and we primarily help organizations secure corporate sponsorship. The other stuff that I do, big deal, mom, wife, friend, civic leader, and author. Excited to be here.
Very fun. I know that Anisha has many, many levels of working with gifted women. She has gifted women as clients. She has gifted women living in her home. She has gifted women that are all a part of her life on many levels. So she's a great fit for the Dare Whimsy team and for the women at Dare Whimsy. Good morning, Sarah Cook. I'm so glad to see you here. I'd like to let you have a good morning and let them know who you are, so they know your face with your name. This is Sarah L. Cook, who's an author, a speaker, a mom, and she is all kinds of excited about sharing things about routines and why routines rock today, because that's absolutely where she lives. Good morning, Sarah.
Good morning. Glad to be here. We had a little time trying to figure out where y'all were. So I'm glad to be here. And like Sweetie said, I like to do lots of things. I'm an author and trainer and a mom of 3 and a seminary teacher, and I just love playing full out.
Absolutely. I see you're sparkling today, and I love sparkle, so that's got my attention already. Good morning, Dr. Edith Johnson. I see you have just come into the room, so I'd love people to know you. Dr. Johnson is an author. She's a mom and a grandmom. She has a specific role with missing in action and multi-intelligence gifted girls, and I'd love for you to share a little bit about what you do, who you work with, and why gifted patients are important to you.
Well, good morning, and it's good to be here after a little snafu. And yes, I work with those that have many talents and don't necessarily acknowledge them and recognize them. So I try to help those that, shall we say, are in mediocrity or struggling with the fact that they have many, many gifts and how they can overcome their intensities and their experiences to be able to express their multi-talents with joy.
Excellent. You know, one of the things I so value about your presence with us each week is you can interpret from a different perspective, from the parental expectation or the teacher expectation or the actually living expectation, because you deal with so many different kinds of gifted women. You can help us perceptualize how these behaviors look from all different points of view and how to help us overcome behaviors that may not be helpful for us. And I'm really excited about that in my own life. And I know that as a mom and as a stepmom, as a teacher, as a client person, a person who has strong offerings for others, man, it's making a difference in my life, and I just cherish you for that because it helps me understand better. Miss Bobby is here from Southern Arkansas. I'm so excited to see her this morning. Miss Bobby is a dear friend, and she and I have worked together on many projects. She is an author. She is a speaker. She also works with children's ministry, and one of the most fun things is she believes in adventures every day in every way. And I'm so excited to let you know Miss Bobby. She's one of the most brilliant creators I've ever worked with. She's capable of just being something pitched at her, and she just makes a product out of it. It's crazy fun. You can say, hey, I'd like to do an event for 400 children, and before the afternoon's over, you're so enthralled with her plans, you can't even imagine 400 children are going to be a task. You're just thinking, I can't wait to do this. So good morning, Bobby.
Good morning.
Tell us a little bit about your experiences as a gifted girl and why you're here.
Well, I'm here to make sure that everyone realizes that they're supposed to have a fun adventure every day, because there is something somewhere in your day that's going to help you have that adventure. And so I actually was talking to my husband this morning about how we all have that little girl inside of us. So when I'm teaching to the kids, I'm not just teaching to the ones whose age says that they are a kid, but I'm speaking to the little girl inside of every one of us.
Oh, you know what? One of the things that you have taught me is to enjoy the little girl celebrating. And I love the fact that you've taught me to really encourage and engage the moment and celebrate small things. In fact, yesterday I had a guest in the house, and she got so tickled at me because I have to-do lists all the time in my planner, things like this that say, you know, you've got to do something. and I finished every checklist on that checklist, and I ripped it to shreds because it had been a really tough day, and I had a lot of fun ripping it to shreds because I overcame the things I had to get done. And normally the grown-up might not allow ripping it to shreds and shooting a basketball across the room, but let me assure you, the little girl wanted to do it. She had a blast doing it because it felt great.
I really hope that after you tore it up, you threw it up in the air for the confetti.
I did indeed, and they got so tickled at me because it made such a hot mess, but it was so worth the cleanup. It truly was. We're so glad today that you're here, and we're talking about when routines rock. You know, gifted girls have some special perception issues, and one of them is that we love to do so many things, and we're curious about so many things that sometimes we can overcommit, and that causes all kinds of gross problems in your life. You know, it's like when you get into that overcommitment place, or over perfection, or overindulgence, or over curiosity, all those over words, you become overwhelmed. And part of what we're talking about today is how routines can rock, and how to decide what to agree to, how to manage your life, and how to start looking at it from a different perspective. One of the teaches that I do with students and clients alike is maybe time management is too perfectionistic driven for you. Your life changes too much for simply time management. You know, you get a calendar that has 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. every hour, every 15 minutes. Well, a gifted girl can often turn that into 100 items every 15 minutes for 14 hours a day. And that's not a very healthy way to live. And so one of the things I often have to work with in the classroom with gifted kids, as well as in the classroom with gifted clients, is what is it you're trying to experience? You know, Danielle Laporte talks about what are your desired desires. The Desire Map product that she does teaches people to stop and pay attention to how they're feeling and what happens in those feelings and what are the core desired feelings. You know, if you're talking to Just 7 and Allison Lewis, she would be talking about how can you be more meaningful? How can your life become more meaningful? And she does a calendar system based on choosing activities based on what's meaningful for your life. But those are all nice identifiers of things that cause our life not to be at peace. You know, for me as a gifted girl, the thing is I want to teach gifted girls how to help their minds be at peace, because we think 100 miles an hour sometimes, and we are in 100 different activities because we want to be a part of things. And sometimes we're in 100 different desires of stress, non-desires of stress, but in different methods of stress because we haven't learned how to do some simple things when we know how to do the complex things. And often our public view is, gosh, it's easy for you. Won't you do this for me? Gosh, it's easy for you. It's such a short amount of time. Could you do this for me? That puts a lot of pressure on our little girls. And you know what? It puts a lot of pressure on our adult girls, little girls inside them. So today I've asked this team, who are all professionals in their own realm, to share some of the things they do that makes their life work, that makes their life more on track. You know, wealth is not just about money. I want people to have a wealth of living. I want them to have a wealth of knowing that their time management's handled, that their financial management's handled, that their relationship management's handled, that their academic or school management's handled. And management's not a word I like. In fact, I don't like to manage anything because to me that sounds like squeezing a balloon and it's going to pop at one end. If I have to manage it in a contained system like time, oh my gosh, I can't add more time, so the only thing is to reduce expectation. And you know what? That's not a bad thing. I got so tickled one time. I went to a time management expert, and they were working with some really smart people, and they said, you can only focus on about 6 things a day, 6 chunk categories. And I laughed in my head, you know, that arrogant laugh we get when we're being gifted. And I said, I get 130, I can show you. And before the 30 minutes was out, he said another statement. He said, and for those of you who do over 100, your health, your wealth, your enjoyment of life is being severely attacked. Woo! Got my attention because I knew the truth of that already. Sometimes when we're so busy and running so well trying to get things accomplished, because that's our value, accomplished, we forget to live a life in between. And that's where we're going to start our conversation today. I would love to pop, first of all, to Dr. Martina McGowan, who is a physician as well as a minister, and she has a specialty of helping people make a movement in a new direction. She's so fun as a writer because she deals with very complex things like change, but she puts it in very simple terms with some teeth behind it to help you understand that it really is a choice, and if you don't choose it, it won't happen. Dr. Martina, would you say good morning to everyone and talk to us about how you manage routines?
I find routines freeing. As most of the members of the team know, I'm still in an area of recovery, so it's hard getting back to my regular routines, and that's why I'm late for the hangout today. Routines free us up to explore other areas of our lives, to spend time with those that we actually care about, instead of everyone else that we're trying to satisfy. It also brings us joy, so we help to satisfy ourselves. My greatest routine is that I get ready for the next day the night before. I figure out where I need to be, what I need to wear, and all of that's ready so that I can shut down and I can talk to my daughter, I can talk to my grandchildren, I can hang out with friends for a while.
You know, that's so valuable because sometimes we let the demands of life wag the doll. You know, instead of you understanding where your time is going to be spent, we get into this pattern of letting other people's demands demand our time. You know, I'm really guilty of that. It's something that I have to really pay attention to. Just this year, I finally gave myself permission to say, you know what, I write best at 4:30 in the morning until 7. No one should be talking to me during that time because I love to write uninterrupted. And as much as I love to hear from my friends, as much as I love to hear from texting and to solve problems with someone, because I really love to solve problems, that's something I love to do as a strategist, I had to recognize the value of my quiet time being interrupted was really destroying the rest of my morning. It's not that I couldn't do it, because we all can. It's that when we choose to do that, we give away something else. You know, maybe you're giving away your solitude. Maybe you're giving away your health. Maybe you're giving away your income-producing opportunity if you're an adult. Maybe you're giving away the ability to learn with ease because you've had enough quiet time to get centered for learning. One of the questions I would love for each of us to explore today as we think about when routines walk, W-R-A-W-K, and RAWK meaning really work for you. I want you to think about what does it bring to you. I know for me personally, when I write down the 6 most important things I do, and I actually do it in 2 different areas. I do it as a person, as a business, and as a person who's a team leader. And so I have really 9 things to do in the day that I'm counting for. 3 that I'm personally going to do, 3 things that I'm professionally going to do, and now 3 things that I'm going to make sure are happening with somebody else and checking in to make sure they happened. You know what? That's a huge improvement for me because I used to have, no kidding, 125 things to get done before 10 o'clock in the morning, and that was my goal. And a lot of them were little things, you know, things like changing a header might not take but a minute or 2. But if you've scheduled a minute or 2 or 2 to 5 minute activities 40 times in a row, man, that's really hard on you. It's hard on you in energy level. It's hard on you in physical eye level. It's hard on you across the board. So for me, when routines started rocking, is when I had the aha moment of it doesn't need to be done on a minute count. It doesn't need to be on even a subject count. It's a module. Okay, I can do a module of time, and I'm going to define amount of time I'm going to spend on it, not the number of things I'm going to get done. For me, that was highly productive because I'm fast. Because I can tend to do things fast, I tend to do more of them. You know, that silly rule that somebody said, if it takes less than 2 minutes, you should do it now. I was stuck on that rule for 100 items straight. 2 minutes times 100 is a really painful 4 hours. So I had to rewrite the rule in my head and not take it so literally and say, I can spend 90 minutes on that. On working on other people's technical problems once a week, I can spend 90 minutes on that. That's comfortable for my business. It's comfortable for my family. It's comfortable for my eyesight. And it's comfortable for me. Guess what? Comfort is allowed. Comfort and ease in your life is preferred for most of us. But very few of us give ourselves permission to truly identify comfort as one of the qualities that we honor. I would love to share with Sarah because I know she and I, as friends and as colleagues, have had many times where we have really had aha moments over the last 5 years about this topic. Sarah, talk to us about your routines and how they've changed. Oops, we're still on mute. Just a second. For some reason, it's not unmuting you. Just a second. We'll get that handled.
Okay.
There you go.
So for some, my routines used to be very similar to what Sweetie's were, which is to just run until there's no time left to run. And now I have chosen to have my mornings start more quietly. So it begins with getting up, getting a drink of water, taking some vitamins to help me, reading in scripture and other good books, meditating, prayer, doing my face, doing my hair, getting kind of ready and set. And I call that like my set point for the day, because I have time that's quiet and I can get my things, my personal time set and myself set, and also looking at my to-do list and really deciding, was what I thought was last night still important today? And so I'm able to, you know, make that more important as I re-look at it. I also sometimes will put things in the crock pot so that I know my family is able to have dinner at 5 or 6 rather than at 8:30 at night, or rather than just pizza from Little Caesars or something. So really taking that morning time to refocus and to redefine what's most important, as well as to have that quiet time has been really key for me.
Excellent. I'm so glad to hear it, because I love the fact that you're high energy like I am, and I love having a teammate that can run with me but also grow with me, and that's one of the reasons I value you the absolute most.
Thank you.
We grow together all the time. I'm going to pop us over to Dr. Edith, because Dr. Edith has some very neat perspectives as a clinician on what happens to people when they do not handle margin in their life, and what happens if they have routines and how that's productive for them. Thank you, Dr. Edith.
Good morning, and yes, it's great. Yeah, you know, being overwhelmed, not having routines, not having a way to manage our overexcitabilities, our sensitivities, our overwhelm, then allows them to go out of control, and you aren't able to actually function in your life with all the different aspects that you have. So having those routines, as both Sarah and Dr. Barntina and Sweetie have described, are very, very important. And you need to add that routine throughout the day so that you have transition times. So that if you're going from your morning routine of your quiet organization piece, you go into your work routine or family routine, whatever is necessary, then you're going to have a transition maybe at lunch, where it's your time again, or can be your time again. And it's important to make allowance for that kind of transition. Give yourselves those 2 to 3 minutes. And then you have the evening time if you're transitioning back to family or to another event. Anyhow, you're changing hats. We all as multi-talents wear very many hats, and so you got to give yourself that 2 to 10 minutes to transition from one hat to the another. That's where the routines come in really, really handy. Or simplicity, so simplifying things, such as the crock pot. And it can be having the clothes laid out, having 3 briefcases versus 1 briefcase, depending on what hat you go. So taking care of yourself, recognizing those assets and those sensitivities really as ways to gear up and use them to make things more exciting and more flowing for you are important too. Don't look at it as a detriment. Look at it as a way that you can make things happen and go forward. So include that as part of how you transition. So do you need the music? Do you need to move around? Do you need to be active? Do you need to make sure there's no tags on the clothes? So take care of yourself through the various things that you're experiencing. Know that movement and activity is important. So I will say routines and routines throughout the day are important for us to be able to be success and manage who we are as multi-talents and gifted people.
Love that. Absolutely love it. You know, one of my topics when I speak to people, and particularly parent groups and school districts, is, are you paying attention to what creates ease in your life through modality? I'm a visual learner. I'm absolutely a visual learner, but I also have the challenge of having a vision impairment. And so I have to very much protect my vision and protect how I function visually, or I don't have vision by the end of the day. It's very easy. I stop focusing, can't do it. So in my world, and I'm going to turn my computer and let you see a little bit, I know for my attention deficit and hyperactivity, which is part of my world, it's never changed in 50 years, I have a chalkboard, and it has big picture items for me that I'm working on. I also have a second checkboard right in front of me for my big projects. And that keeps me on step. If you notice there's only 6 things up in 2 different piles, that's because that's as much as I deal with now. That helps me visually affirm that there's no more time than that, because I've guaranteed my family that the weeks I'm home, not in the studio or not at an event, I'm going to cap the day at 6 hours. The reason? Because guess what? I'm not making more money or being more productive after 6 hours. If I don't get in playtime, if I don't get in rest time, if I don't get in nap time, because I'm up really early some days with studios, I'm just not productive. So I was fooling myself by being an executive-itis girl, which means that I could be in the office for 12 straight hours. And it turned out that 6 of those hours were pretty non-productive because my head would start spinning if I didn't get time away. And it turns out that if I leave and go out for a walk, or if I leave and go to the mall, in my case, I like visual pretty. So I have 4 or 5 magazines by me, and I have a little 3-ring notebook by me, and it's just filled with things I like to look at. If I just spend 10 minutes of every hour in that space, I produce so much more than if I don't take the time. I need the playtime. Sometimes, like today, we have snow in Alabama. There's no way I can go play in the snow today because it's solid ice right now. It's not the kind of snow you'd play in. So I'm not outside skating out on it, or at least not yet. I may later. But as the snow comes down and gets more playful, where it's safe to play in it and have snowball fights with my children and my Labradors, you can guarantee I'll be outside playing. Just taking that 30 or 45 minutes and changing gears and changing clothes and getting outside and exercising, exerting myself, will give me better focus for the task I have later today. I think to give ourselves permission for that kind of routine change, for when the weather comes in and changes things, we really have to do that for ourselves. Likewise, if you're visual, why try and be an auditory learner? Really? I mean, do you really want to work on the telephone if what you do best is to see someone? Or maybe you want to use a Google Hangout instead, because then you have visual and auditory. But it's okay in your schedule to acknowledge that, to say, I need a routine that includes, in my case, physical exertion. I need to go work out, or I need to go walk, or I need to go play, because that's how I release stress. For some people, it's they need quiet time. I have a mom who just absolutely starts the day in silence, and that's what in my house, that never happened with 4 children. So she gets up like I used to at 4 o'clock before her children do to get that solitude time in, because that centers her for the day. Some of you have a great need to run in the morning. I'll never understand that need, ever. But I love watching you go by in the window. And so some people have a need to go physically run in the morning to get their high energy out. Some people paint in the mornings. Those kind of routines are just as valid as the work skills for school or for jobs or for what we do in our relationships. And guess what? Routines include other relationships besides the one with ourselves. I personally focus a lot on the relationship with self because I wasn't very good to me for many years. But some of you are really, really good to yourselves, and you don't focus on the relationship with those living among you. And so we all have to develop things that work for all of us. And that is so exciting that we're seeing Lucy and we're seeing Gail Roddy and others join us this morning. Ashley is an artist in Hemet, California, and she's with us today in video, which we're so glad to see her pretty face. I'm going to pop her into space so she can talk to us about how she deals with routines in a never-changing, ever-changing world as an artist.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, it looks like a beautiful day in California.
It is. It's gorgeous. It's a little bit cooler, too. Thank you for having me.
We're so glad you're with us today. It looks so different than the snow-filled yard I have today.
So you got to be fast on your feet, and learning to know what is a hard stop and what can be changeable within a daily routine is really important. I am transitioning more into illustrative work, so I constantly carry a notepad with me, and because I'm in transition, I'm also carrying index cards to remind me when I'm feeling in my small mind who I am. And that's Lily. Sorry. Lily's my dog, and she wants to meet everybody.
We're so glad you're with us today. And you're right, because sometimes tracking in your routines and schedule where the feelings are matters so much. You know, for me, isolation can cause me to have really skewed perceptions. I might think after 2 or 3 hours of working that somebody doesn't want to come when they simply just couldn't find the room, Or it could be that in my routine, if I have a daily routine and I haven't explained to someone that I don't receive calls before 7 a.m., it may be something that happens in my relationship later when they think that I'm being rude when they call every day at 6:30 and I keep getting them off the phone. So part of this routine rocking is communicating your routine to others. You know, one of the things I do with clients is I tell them if they're having a difficulty with their website, they can call me between 7 and 8 in the morning, or if they need just technical help quickly, they can call me on Thursday mornings when I'm in the office if I'm not traveling. And so I make a time, even in hotels, to absolutely be available. But I had to also talk to my friends and neighbors and family and my church family, because my reality was if I didn't let them know what I was shooting for in business, they stopped by 24/7. You know, I have a studio in Nashville that I work with, and we have time here at the house that we're videotaping, and if I'm not careful, in the middle of every tape session on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, I will have people knocking on the front door to have coffee, because my house is in the South, and we invite people to drop by and have coffee and a sweetbread with us at any time. So I have to literally inform my church family and my friends, hey, we can do that on Mondays or Thursdays or Fridays, but Tuesdays and Wednesdays are off limits. And that's a kind way to protect myself, but it's also a friendly way to protect the relationship so they don't come across town ready for a wonderful experience of hospitality and get told, sorry, not now. You know, communication's a big part of it when you're a gifted kid. Whether you're a little girl or a big girl, we need to communicate our needs to others, and we also need to hear communications of others and their needs. All right, I'm going to pop it to Gail Roddy, who is going to share with us, again, why routines rock in her world and what she's learned through the process of them. Good morning, Gail. Oh, goodness, we've got you muted. Just a second. We'll get that undone.
There we go.
All right.
Routines matter to me because when I get up first thing in the morning, I love to spend that time, that hour and a half, with myself, just centering myself. So I have a routine where I get up and the first thing I do is take the dog for a walk. It's kind of difficult this morning when the wind chill is 30 below, but most mornings he still has to go out, but most mornings we get a walk. But what I do is try to have things like my clothes all laid out. The clothes that I get into to go walk him and then come back and exercise, and then the clothes that I get into after I shower. So those are set out before I go to bed. And it's kind of fun that I kind of make it a ritual. What will I wear tomorrow? What is going to make me feel good tomorrow? That really gets my day started, to have those things set in place every day, not just Monday through Friday, but 7 days a week. So that kind of rocks my world.
I love that, Gail Roddy, because you're one of the people that I really learn from all the time in the way you handle self-care, because you're never selfish, but you're always protective of your own time and others. And I value that because it's so honoring of the person you are. It's also honoring of the people you're in relationship with. And I love the way you honor people that way. You know, part of what we have to be able to do is to be able to explore what our needs are. And some of us have had our needs not met for so long, we don't even know it's a possibility. It's not unusual at all for my gifted young ladies, particularly the 20 to 40-year-olds, to say, oh, I don't need time. That's for the lazy people. I don't need to slow down. That's for simple people. I don't need that. I'm good without it. And I always just say, wow, she's so denying her own needs at this point that she thinks it's somehow that she's better if she's perfectionistic and not human. And guess what? We all pay a price when we go to that mode, because it's not human to not need to take care of yourself. That's a machine. A machine can be plugged in and run for 24 hours a day, and even machines wear out. But a human spirit needs laughter and love and nurture and learning and time to get excited and exuberant and time to mourn when it's time. We are not a machine, and guess what? We need gears. We need to change our gears, because sometimes we need a quiet resolve. Sometimes we need to add pressure to ourselves to go past what we're afraid of or what we're concerned about. Sometimes we just need to stop and say, is this working? I love Dr. Phil saying, how's that working for you? And sometimes we're so busy denying that something isn't working. Did you hear me, girls? Denying that something isn't working, because we've gotten ourselves by ourselves long enough and we're not willing to dare somebody else's stuff in our space. One of the reasons Dare Whimsy exists is because I felt like it was very important for gifted girls to have a perch to fly to, a perch where other girls who are just like them in the way they think could hear and engage with them and share their experiences as a gifted girl. Because so many times gifted women and gifted girls are in isolation because they're leaders, or they're in isolation because they're missing in action, or they're in isolation because they're perfectionistic driven and they don't dare relationships with others. They're afraid of being misunderstood. Or they've chosen to be moles, people who work around the edges and don't deal with humans because they don't feel comfortable working with them. And guess what? We're not built to be isolated. In fact, we start shutting down. If we shut ourselves down in isolation too long, it can cause depression and serious mental illness. It's a problem we don't want to go to. So part of the reason Dare Whimsy exists is to give a playground, a place to learn how to relax, how to restore and release those kind of concerns in a community that understands them and can talk to us about them. Lucy Amal has joined us. I'd love for her to talk about how she uses routines in her life. She's a mom, an adopted mom, as well as a biblical counselor, and she also is an author and a writer, and writes at lucyamal.com. Good morning, Lucy. I think she's unmuted now. Would somebody check for me? There you go. Here's your pretty face. We can see you, so go ahead and try and speak and we'll see.
Are you speaking to me?
Yes, Lucy, it's your turn if you'd like to go.
Okay, could you remind me of the question?
Absolutely. We're having all kinds of technical problems, so we want to make sure we heard. I'd love for you to share with us how you use routines in your life as a mom, an adoptive mom, a biblical counselor, a wife, and an entrepreneur, as a writer. How do routines help your life work?
I definitely need routines. It's as simple as, like I heard Gail saying, I always lay out my clothes I'm going to wear the day before so I don't have to think about it the next day. And lots of times, depending on what I'm doing, whether I'm going into the office to counsel people or I'm going to be working at home, it might be some very comfortable clothes like today, or it could be something that looks like nice, ready for the office kind of stuff. But I would have to say the routine, I'll call it a habit that I think is the most important for me and for the people I work with, is getting rid of the negative thoughts and replacing them with the positive thoughts. Because so often our routine is to say all sorts of basic crap to ourselves, whether that is, you're not enough, you're so fat, you're over, you're not working hard enough, you're a loser, nothing's going to get better, all of that kind of stuff that so often we say to ourselves throughout the day, and replacing that routine, if it were, that habit, with the good habit of what does God say about me? God says that I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. God says that I'm a victor in Him. God says I have success in Him. So it's recognizing who I am in Christ and then using those words to replace the nasty words that the world tells me and that I'm so apt to repeat.
Totally agree with that. I think that our self-languaging matters so much. In fact, one of mine right now is kind of a fun thing. My daughter Madison is an artist, and she has made this Sebastian bunny for me. And Sebastian speaks to me all the time. Right now I'm focusing on effort, not outcomes, because I know the outcomes I'm working with are long-term. They're not things I'm going to get a ribbon for today. And so for me to be able to do that, I have to be very, very careful, and I have to be able to check it. So I've even made myself a list. The effort, an action, a release, a learn, an identify, or an acknowledgement. I do high fives for those right now. I don't have an outcome. It's not like running an Olympic race where I cross the ribbon and I can say, I'm done. The being done is changing my mindset from the end process to the effort and honoring the effort. If you've got something ingrained in your life, like working 125 things a day, you're not going to change that, most likely, that day. But by taking a stance of saying, okay, I'm overcommitted right now. And I can't just drop the ball and say, hey, I'm not going to be overcommitted anymore. You just deal with your project and I'll just bow out. That's not integrity with other humans. Okay? So when you get yourself in an overwhelmed or overcommitted place, you may have to take 30, 60, or 90 days, or maybe even 18 months if it's a contract, to start backing out of that space. We can't often change in an instant. You know, I tell some clients that change is like a hot potato. You can absolutely stop holding the hot potato and it stops burning. But that can only be true if it's not something you've committed to legally in business or relationally in a marriage or parenthood. You can't just say, oh, the baby's too much trouble, I'll just stop dealing with it. You know, when we've made commitments, we have responsibilities and we have consciously chosen things that are not going to go away. You know, I promise you, the minute I was about to deliver my first son, I was ready to drop that commitment and send it back because it still wanted to come out and I didn't want to deal with it. And it got, you know, there's no point at 9 months pregnant to say you're not going to have a baby. You're going to have the baby, and it's going to be the rest of your life unless you give it up for adoption. And I wasn't really wanting to do that. I just didn't want to face what I was facing, not knowing what labor would be. Sometimes not knowing is the very best place to begin. We call it unawareness. And when you're in unawareness, you're in a powerful place if you'll own the unawareness. In a community like this, I can come in and say, Gail, Martina, Edith, Bobby, I'm really frustrated with trying to eat low carb. I need to be able to do it from the hotel room. You guys have all kind of eaten low carb for a long time. What do you do when you travel? And suddenly, the cohorts in my community can come through with some suggested options, and I have a whole lot more awareness now that it's not just all or nothing. I love that about community, and one of the reasons Dare Whimsy exists is to give gifted girls community perspectives from other gifted girls who may have grown into women. Okay? That's when we say it's gifted girls of all ages, because the truth is we're all different ages internally. Some of us are 50 outside and inside, and some of us, like me, are 50 out on the outside and about 4 in some areas. And some of us are wise sages. I know Madison Getty is not with us today, but man, she's 18, but she's so wise. There are people in her world that are much older that are not nearly as wise with the common sense she has. And so having maturity in one area does not mean you have maturity in all. And part of the routines is understanding when you need help. You know what? If you're busy doing all the time, or busy avoiding doing, because some of you have that problem. Some of you have some act-outs and that you're so busy avoiding learning something that you really pay prices for it. And a routine that encourages you to learn. For me personally, on the 24th of every month, that's my birthday, I give myself the gift of learning. I pick something I'm really interested in. I may even pick 2 somethings. And that day I schedule off appointments, and in the morning I really do some in-depth learning on a topic I'm interested in. I reward myself with that day. I absolutely give myself permission to turn off the calls, the internet, the emails, anything else, and actually learn something I'm interested in learning about. Sometimes it's for my business. Sometimes it's for my life at home. Sometimes it's just because right now we're renovating a house, and so a lot of my learning has to do with something pretty for my house. We're making a mantle out of a pecan tree that fell on the ground, and I've never made a mantle before in my life. I've never used a lathe. I've never used wood to do a mantle. So Les and I together are learning on the 24th of each month how to make that pecan trunk into a mantle for our home, and that's fun. It really is, and we know that someday we'll value putting our family and grandchildren's pictures on it. I would love to pop over to Anisha and let her be a part of us and talk about some of the routines. She travels a lot, and like me, she deals with a lot of different levels, from family and little children to grown-up adults and clients and big brands. So what are some of the routines you found to be helpful for you, Anisha? Oops, wait a minute, we got to get you unmuted. Just a sec. I apologize. All right, have we got her unmuted, Sarah? Let me do it one more time just to verify, because I see it not going. There you go.
Am I unmuted now?
Now you are. We can hear you. Good deal.
Okay, awesome. So there's an underlying theme of getting centered in the morning, and I do have my getting centered activities before everything else starts happening for me. I think that what has made my routine rock is, setting my agenda. On Sundays, I don't take calls. I don't take emails. Sometimes I don't even Facebook on Sundays, and it's just my time to plan out my week's objectives, whether they are for work, whether they are for clients, whether they are for family and children, or whether they're for all of the little teeny dogs that we have here at our house. I think that what's made it rock is like sticking to my plan and learning how to say no, and also not letting the energy and the energy in situations, because my work is so high paced most days, not letting the energy and situations of other people really distract me from my overall outcome of like reflecting on the day and making sure that I'm checking off everything.
I love that. I absolutely love that. Let me get you back to where I can see you. You guys can't see me right now, so let me fix that. Right. One of the things that you said that's so valuable is I protect my energy. I am aware of what is my responsibility, and I'm aware of what somebody else's is. And if they're having a bad day or they're having an exuberant day, I protect myself from their energy. You know, it's very fun to get all kinds of wild and exuberant with people when they're excited, but it's very interruptive if you were trying to do task-driven things done. Likewise, when someone calls with a hot mess emergency because they didn't plan well and they now want you to fix it, it may be your role to fix it if that's what you were hired for, but other than that, girls and boys, it's not your job to do it just because somebody else dropped their ball. And I am such a Southerner, sometimes I lay prey to that, because in the South we say, if you can, you should. If you can, you should. Well, gifted girls have a problem with that because we can do almost anything. And if we put our mind to it, we can learn almost anything. So I had to do a different boundary than if you can, you should. And the question becomes, is it mine to do? You know, sometimes we can get selfish and not help other people enough, and that's a concern. But the first question should be, is this mine to do? And then the second question is, am I the best person to do it? Because you know what? You can enable people by doing things they should be doing for themselves. And it's so important in your routine. I know one of my friends, I just love her to death, has just gone through this experience of waking up on her fourth child. The other three were not enabled. The baby sometimes gets enabled, and she's still tying that child's Velcro shoes on, and she's still putting his socks on, and he's 4.5 years old. Now, her other children, by the time they were 2, put on their own socks and their own Velcro top shoes, and they knew how to do it. But sometimes we forget by the time a baby comes along 6 years later that enabling them by us being in charge of their life is not going to make your life better later. We all need the success of being independent, and we all need the success of being cared for enough to teach. You know, if you're helping your children with their laundry, that's kind. If you're doing it for them when they're 18, you've left them wide open for not surviving at college. Okay? Some of that's true in our family for ourselves, too. If I pour my husband's coffee every single time, and he gets used to thinking he doesn't know how to pour coffee anymore, I may make him pay a price when he goes to a meeting and nobody at the Department of Defense pours his coffee. It's just not going to happen. Now, does he love that? Yeah, he loves me to get up and pour his coffee, and I love taking care of him and nurturing him that way. I have a guest in the house today, and she's been nurturing me for 3 days by cooking dinner and serving us, even though she's a guest. That was her gift to our house, is to take care of dinner this week. It's fabulous. Do I expect a guest to do that? That's not part of the routine of being a guest in my house. Although I might should say so, since several of you have been guests in my house, maybe that's the new rule. All guests cook dinner. But I know that routines rock. You know, it's the #1 problem I have experienced with school districts, parochial schools, private schools, and statewide school districts is about routines for children. When we talk about children who are having difficulty in the classroom, it's rarely about learning. It's about changing routines and being able to handle the transitions of routines changing throughout a school day. Whether it's a routine to turn in a product, like homework, or whether it's a routine of where their things go, like a backpack of where it goes. One of the things I love, and I'm going to share it if I have it in here, although I don't think I do right now, one of my favorite things that I deal with is a safety bag, clear backpack. Because with a gifted child who goes to a magnet school in our area, or a homeschool parochial group that goes to a once-a-week school together with the public school, that clear backpack allows us to see that they have everything they need as they hit the door at our house. I personally changed to them 5 years ago because when I go through the airport, I don't even have to unload my backpack. My backpack has my laptop in it, and I can see everything in that backpack, including my wallet, and it's safe, and I don't forget things in the hotel room anymore. Did you hear that anymore? I used to do it all the time. And so that's a routine that rocks for me. It was learning that a certain kind of backpack, a clear backpack from safety bags, is fantastic for me. It's like learning that the visual on my board, having a chalkboard in front of me and a chalkboard to the right of me, I don't use chalk most of the time. I tape stuff to it, Post-its. But that dark background with the light stuff helps me visually keep in mind what my next module is. And you know, if I see 24 things on the list before the lunch line, because I have a lunch line, because one should never miss lunch. Pooh Bear and I understand each other. Is there any more? There should always be more. The lunch line is always there. And if the lunch line is there, I know that I've got to change that into 2 days worth of work, because there really should only be 6 things above lunch. Okay? 6 things that I can accomplish. How many of you are ready to say that routines are your friend? Thumbs up. How many of you are recognizing at the end of this conversation that maybe you should pay attention to the routine a minute and see what's working for you? I would really encourage each of us on the Dare Whimsy team, personally and professionally, to really think about your routines. What works for you? For me, a big aha last year, and Martina McGowan helped me understand this one, is carrying my own coffee cup wherever I travel, instead of being at the whims of whatever coffee or paper cup is in my hotel room, provided a lot of peace and comfort. She even taught me that I could take my own coffee. I don't have to just drink the coffee in there. She bought me a pound of a coffee I just loved, and she brought it to my home and said, now you have your own and your own measuring spoon, so when you travel, you got it. Guys, that was like, you know, eureka for me, because as much as I planned for taping and doing videotaping and scripts and sponsors and setup, I had never planned for myself to have a cup of coffee I liked in the morning. And now Gail Roddy has added the second layer of that, and she's taught me a cup of tea I like too. So next week, like last week, I invited you to show me a picture of your favorite cup. And some of you did that homework, and some of you forgot. So I'm going to say it again. Next week, I want to see your coffee mug here at Dare Whimsy, because I think it's important to show. If you brought yours today, let's share them right now. Oh, look at there. Some people did it. Yay! I love it. I'd love to see those pictures on Dare Whimsy's wall, because so many people don't realize that they have one until they think about it. I have 2 favorite cups. I have a black polka dot one, and then my cup that I'm using today is a plastic one. And the reason I like it is it collapses. This one, I have something in it, or I'd show you. It collapses, makes a circle in my purse. And so I can pop it up and have a full glass, or I can, when it's empty, push it down, and it makes just a disc in my purse. And so I always have a cup for water when I'm out and about. And I like to drink from cups. I don't like drinking from bottles personally. And so having something that pops into a cup is very comforting to me when I'm on the road. And I can take just a little bit of something with me instead of having to drink it all at that moment. Because I'm a fast girl, as far as I may be the one hitting to the television recording first, or for the studio, and I need to grab a cup and go so I can be prepared when they get there. How many of you know that there's a routine for health, too, in your life? We're going to be talking about that next week. Our next week's topic are routines for health in your life as a gifted and creative woman. We're going to be talking about physical health next week. Some weeks we'll be talking about financial, emotional health, or relational health. But next week we're going to be talking about physical health and the routines that support that as a gifted woman. We're coming to you as the Women of Dare Whimsy from darewhimsy.com. The show is called Between Us Girls. Each Wednesday at 10 a.m. Central Time, we meet together to share conversations about living the adventures of living gifted. On Thursdays at darewhimsy.com, we have a special day for blogging, and it's a joint blog. We call them sister posts. And each of us here will have a piece of a blog that tells them what our best routine, when routines rock, and what works for us. Now, you may resonate with every single writer there, or you may come and find that person's not my personality, but this one really is, and we want you to follow them home. In other words, we're not just there to teach, we're there to listen and learn from each other. And we know that if you click on the Read More, you'll go straight to their personal website where they may have books or free downloadables or videos on the same topics. This is not a place just to be one kind of style. Some of us are high creatives, some of us are high routines, some of us are high into linear thinking, some of us are vertically high in how we create, some of us are high energy, and some of us are much more careful about going through at a steady pace. So I think you'll find all kinds of gifted personalities there You'll find all kinds of creatives and all ages of learners. We even have a little girls group starting in April. And the little girls are so fun. I've been taping them in Nashville, and they are so adorable, and how they talk about their giftedness in the classroom just makes you giggle, because they nail us. They nail us as adults, and they nail us as mommies, and they nail us as instructors and teachers. You're going to get so tickled. Listen to them out us on who we are as gifted women and how they perceive us as gifted girls. We have a place that's on the web that really comes alive in July, but it's already alive a little bit, called nicelybright.com. Because you see, being very gifted is lovely, but if you can't learn to get along, it doesn't work very well. So we have a website called nicelybright.com for parents, educators, homeschoolers, and the children themselves, where they can learn to use their gifts and talents in a way that's social skill correct. Okay, we have to learn that when you're smarter than the teacher, how not to act out in class. That when you know the right answer and the teacher may not have the most up-to-date answer, how to say that in a way that doesn't get you sent to detention hall or home. So we have a place called Nicely Bright, where we gather fun activities. Miss Bobby teaches there sometimes. It's so fun. She teaches the most magnificent classes with some of her characters there, and I bet in the spring you're going to look forward to her summer school classes there. So I can't wait to share with you nicelybright.com. And I know that all of you are looking forward to being with us next week. That's the end of our show. Thank you so much for coming. Again, this is Sweetie Berry with Between Us Girls and the Women of Dare Whimsy. Goodbye.